We are back. Today we have the director of Shawnee Mission West Orchestra, Curtis Mulvenon. How you doing?
I'm well, Rob. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for coming on the show. So we met because you were my student teacher at Shawnee Mission South back in 19...
Yeah, that was the same year I was thinking it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
With the infamous Mary Lou Jones.
Yeah, I think she had thousands of student teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had about, we had 120 or something. I mean, we had a pretty powerhouse program going right through there.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. That was one of the reasons I wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then she moved over to Liberty for another 15 years or something after that.
It was a long time.
And what was, I think you would have been my sophomore year, maybe something like that, sophomore or junior, I think.
I was there in the spring of 99.
99, okay. Yeah, that would have been junior year for me, yeah.
Okay.
But what was there anything that was really fun about student teaching, or some lesson that you learned that was just life-changing, or?
Well, yeah, but not from Mary Lou.
Yeah.
So the thing that happened to me, so when I student taught with Mary Lou, I was with her, and you guys at South, and then I went over with Gina Barfady
Mm-hmm.
at the middle school,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was with Jennifer Mitchell at the elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, at the middle school, she was about to get married, and I walked in the first day, and she said, hey, I'm on an important phone call. Can you take the kids? And that was my first day of student teaching. And so, I'm sure it was very important, whatever I don't know what that phone call was, but she just kind of left me in there with the kids. And so it was this like sink or swim moment. And I actually really remember that because I had to go do it. So I grabbed the music and, talked to the kids, say, hey, let's go.
Yeah.
Now, I think that, the thing I remember most about the student teaching experience was Laura Block, who, is now, playing professionally but viola now. But
Yep.
so we were getting ready for solo and ensemble contests, and we were doing this little pre-event where everybody would, like, down in the pit in the orchestra room there, would play their solos. And,
Yeah.
and Dr. Jones would, give them critique or whatever. So I'm listening to Laura Block just shred this Bach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just flawless. And she's playing in. I noticed in the middle of her performance, she kept glancing at the clock. And I thought, she is so bored.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Just uber talented.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought a lot about that, about how do you keep the kids at the top, how do you keep them motivated and challenged and still excited about it? So anyway, those are my two big memories from student teaching. Yeah.
So Mike was in my grade. I mean,
Yeah,
I sat
jealous,
two seats from Mike Block, and their whole family of freaks. I mean, they're just Dad Glenn taught youth symphony for however long.
I was in the youth symphony under him.
Yeah.
When I was in the early '90s.
I mean, Mike is he Yo-Yo Ma played at his wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nuts, right? I mean, and he was tuning his cello before concerts and stuff, basically Yo-Yo Ma's roadie for a while. He calls him Yo-Yo Mike. Like, that's how close they are, So,
yeah, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah. And so they were something else, that family. And I have a funny story about Laura. Is that my senior year, I had been like first chair viola for almost 2 years by then, and I did one of the best auditions that I'd ever done. This would have been like spring of senior year.
Okay.
She's sophomore, had just switched to viola, right? Like the summer before that. So,
okay.
3 months ago.
I actually didn't know when she switched.
Yeah, it was between freshman and sophomore, because she was a violin and then she switched. And then, but anyway, I did an awesome audition, and she ended up beating me, and that was my realization that, like, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's just a freak of nature. you know, that
Oh,
is
yeah.
just an insane player, and you got to just try your best and practice, and that's all you can do.
It's those experiences though that make us who we are. You know,
Mhm.
so I tell a story to my students every year. So we go through the placement test process in May. And so if you're a sophomore, junior, or senior, you have to audition to be in one of the top 2 orchestras.
Mhm.
And obviously anybody that wants to play gets to play. It's not like you're, worked out of the program or whatever, but you have to score at a certain level. So I tell them the story that when I teach at Westwood. Did you know I went there?
No, I didn't know you went there. Yeah,
I was a student.
Yeah.
My mom went to West.
Mhm.
I went to West. My boys went to West.
Mhm. Wow.
So I tell them that my freshman year I was a bass player and real big into jazz, and there was a junior bass player in the top jazz band,
Mhm.
and man, I wanted that spot, and I thought, I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that
Mhm.
spot. Well, I didn't get it. And so my sophomore year, I had to take the jazz lab class, which was a freshman level class.
Mhm.
All of my friends moved up into the jazz band, the top band. So I sat in the same exact class for another year. And I tell my students that, you can't control if you make whatever group you want to make or not, but you can control your reaction to it.
Yep.
And then you have a choice to make. You can get really frustrated and get depressed, or you can get really angry and get motivated and say not again. So I think it's great. Things like that happen to you. It's you learn your best lessons through those failures. So anyway.
I heard Dave Chappelle said something about that. He's like the second gig he ever did. He got like booed off the stage worse than anybody ever. He's like, it was horrible. But he's like, that's the reason why I'm a comic now, is because he was just like, dude, life can't possibly get any worse than that. That's the worst it's gonna get, and nothing happened. He's like, that was the best thing that ever happened to him. Is using that failure to propel yourself. And what do you think in general? Because I've talked to a lot of people about auditions in general. What do you think about? I mean, you kind of alluded to it, I guess, but some people that think that that's not necessarily not fair, but you think that's good?
Well, I think that going through the process is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's and I tell my students that, first and foremost, I make no bones about that. I decide who's in my classes. So they go through the scoring process where they play scales and excerpts. But I tell them that I have a score that I put in too, and that it is work ethic and your ability to get along in a group. Are you on time? Things like that. And I say that I don't, the audition process is one thing. I decide who's in my class.
Yeah.
And it is a no questions asked. And I think I had a parent, so I've been at West 15 years. I think I had a parent my third year call and complain about the whatever orchestra her daughter got placed in. I haven't had one complaint since then.
Yeah, wow.
And so I think the process is extremely important because it's life. There are times in your life where you have to perform at your best right now. And there are consequences if you underperform. And so I value that process a lot. It's really weird though because I've tried to come up with all these like the perfect advice to help the kids get through that, and there isn't. It's so dependent on the individual and how they react to that process. It's really tough. You can tell. I thought for a long time it was. It's about being over prepared. You have to play those scales and those excerpts so many times, have them memorized so much that you just go on autopilot. And for some kids, that's great. That's good advice. For other kids, they still go and get so nervous that they just can't make it through it. I actually have been doing some studying on this. There's a guy named Frank Diaz who used to teach at UMKC, and he's at the Jacobs School now in Indiana, and he teaches classes in mindfulness and music performance.
Yeah, wow.
And so we brought him into Shawnee Mission, and he did this whole thing with my orchestra. He said one of the things to fight performance anxiety is you trick your brain into thinking you're sleeping by a breathing technique. So he taught the kids how to breathe, how you breathe when you're sleeping. And he says, and you do this, you go through this process, and it calms you down, lowers your blood pressure, because you trick your brain into thinking that you're actually sleeping. And so he talks a lot about mindfulness.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. I mean, and like you just said, that would be, first of all, my first piece of advice is be ridiculously prepared.
Yeah.
But the one that I would say is it happens with all of us that, year 30 of performing, it's just like, okay, another gig. I mean, you haven't, you tell yourself, I mean, I can play. I've been playing 30 years, and so the more you practice in front of people, I would say that would be another one for me. But people still get nervous, like we were talking about jazz here before the interview started, and if somebody drops a song on me in the middle of the performance, I'm just as nervous as anybody. If I've never played that song before, I'm all, oh crap,
Yeah.
And so that still doesn't,
Well, one of the things I do make sure that I do every year with that placement test process is that they have to play 2 excerpts and then 2 scales for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually not for me. I hire judges in.
Yeah.
So it's a so
Right.
that score is
Unbiased,
not, there's no bias in that score. I make sure that there's excerpts that every kid can obtain musically
Yeah.
with some effort.
Yeah.
But when the kids go in to play, I tell the judges, look for the kid that is doing the right fingering.
Mm.
I make sure that there are multiple passages that are playable in first position that really shouldn't be played in first.
Yes.
But the kid that has never had a private lesson, is at the lower end of the talent spectrum or the work ethic spectrum or whatever, that kid still can look at that excerpt and go, I can do this.
Yeah.
I've known people, or I've seen some students come to me with excerpts from other teachers, similar situation, and the excerpts are just so ridiculously hard that you have to have a private teacher
Right.
to even get through the notes. So I don't make my excerpts ridiculously hard. I just tell that my judges score up the kids that are playing very musically.
Yeah.
So I really have a focus on tone and on vibrato and on a kid that has done the research and knows the right bowings for the excerpt. So I don't put bowings or tempos or any of that in it. It's all up to the kid.
Yeah, because there's like a spectrum, right? And even if you have an easier excerpt technically, there's still an enormous spectrum of how you're going to play that. I mean, absolutely pocket rhythm, or
exactly.
I mean, the tone, the fingerings, you're going to get a really good player and they're going to sound great on it, but even another player,
right?
And that's probably wise, because I know what you mean. I've seen some other excerpts. I'm like, you would have to get fingering advice for this, like you said. You have to get it.
Yeah, and my scores, when the judges give me the scores back and I go put them in the spreadsheet and tally it all up and look at bet where the groups are, I haven't been surprised at that group in 12 years. I bet.
Yeah.
It lays exactly like I probably thought it was going to lay. Some kids get nervous, but the kids are so great. We're all in the big classroom, and then they go out into the hallways into 2 other rooms for the actual placement test.
Yeah.
So the kids are like cheering for each other as they leave the room. They're chanting their names.
That's great.
They all fight for each other.
You're right. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I make a big deal too, and I tell them, so I post the results online in their Google Classroom thing, and I tell them that you're all my students, and I love you all the same. Don't hurt one of my students. So if you made a group that you wanted to make, I'm happy for you. I want you to make that group. But if you talk down to somebody that didn't make that group, that's one of my kids.
Yeah.
And if you hurt one of my kids, you and I are not going to get along well. And so I try to make sure that they understand. And I've had a few kids. Every year I'll have a kid that'll come to me that has maybe never been the top player, but they found their place in my lower tier group.
Right.
I have kids come to me every year and say, I don't care what the placement test results, I want to be in the lower group.
Right.
Because that's become their group.
Right.
And most of the time those kids were not going to move up anyway. They're not at that level of playing. But the fact that they own that group, and that's just the atmosphere that they've created and that I want in my room. So that's why I think I haven't had the a parent call, because I don't think most of the kids really care where they end up. They just like to play.
Right, yeah. And that's sort of this is a weird thing that I know a lot of musicians would 100% agree with, is there's sort of an identity thing that happens with being an orchestra specifically, or band or choir, where it kind of gets to be your thing. And I mean, that's what they're kind of explaining, even though it's not the upper group, it becomes kind of part of your life, even if you're not practicing every day. You guys have kind of a culture there at every single school. And I think that's really neat. I was definitely, super orc dork, I mean, I was there,
Right.
and I think that's neat. So you were talking a little bit about kind of, I guess I was thinking a little bit about what's struggling for me right now is dealing with like motivation with my like private students. And I found that with myself, I'm so into this stuff, I mean, this is literally all I do is teach music and then go listen to it and then go perform it and then go teach it again, and like all I do is music. And so it is frustrating when I have students that aren't 100% into it too. For myself, I'm much more annoyed at the ones that don't really like this rather than the ones that aren't very good, that are struggling to practice.
Yeah.
That's my own personal opinion.
No,
I can sit there with the guys that are struggling through it but sort of like it and want to try. I can deal with them all day. What's your general thing about kind of motivation? And it was mostly for me about what do I have control over? Is kind of the question.
Well, yeah, every kid's different there. So I teach, I have a private studio also.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
teach, I have like 7 students, right? I teach on Monday nights, and really that's it. Well, first of all, I can tell you that every student in the world's battled that at some point, being not motivated. I think one of the best things that I try to do is let them call them out on it right away. But I approach it from an understanding standpoint, and I talk about that. Your motivation in life on anything. Often it looks like that. It's not a motivation. Is not a steady increase. Rob, I dropped out of college after my sophomore year. I gave up a full ride scholarship. I was done.
Wow.
I sold my bass.
Wow.
I was an electrician. I wired houses and
Wow.
stuff, and realized about 6 months into that I had made a massive mistake. And I was married at the time already, and I called my wife and said, I got to go back. I screwed up. But so I come out, so I share that story with students that are having lack of motivation. I just tell them, look, the ones that get through it, you just battle through this.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I was, I've gone through periods of not wanting to be better, not, I couldn't find that I had. So that actually seems to help the most to me. When you tell a kid, hey, I get it, I'm not mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to battle through this. So you don't give up, you don't quit. You fight. You got to find that thing again. And so sometimes I really don't change up the lesson. I'm not gonna change my curriculum to appease a kid, but I might change the approach to it a little bit.
Yeah.
I have a very strict, thing of what I go through with my students, because I know that, 90% of my studio is all state players, and I know I know what doors that opens, and I know how to get them there. And I guess I've done it for long enough that, so I have a student right now who's battling that. Mm-hmm. She's young. She's in middle school, and I've taught too many students that get like that, and then you just ride with them through it, because they're going to come out of it, and I know what she's going to be, and she'll get out of it. But her mom, the mom keeps talking to me. Well, how do I get her? And, I bug her to practice. I was like, why? It's going to make her not want to do it more. Just leave her alone. She's having a bad time. She's not motivated right now. Just leave it alone. It'll be okay. It's not life and death.
Yeah.
She hasn't practiced bass very well for a month and a half. Okay. Now, if it continues like that, and I'll be honest, it's not like a month and a half straight. Like, it would be a good week and then a bad week.
Right.
And then,
That's different.
So
that's way different.
Um, that's one of the hardest parts of our job.
Yeah,
Is trying to find what that motivation is.
It's the key, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the key to the whole thing is how do you deal with that? Yeah.
Yeah. I think this ties in. I might answer a whole bunch of these questions.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But what I think is, I heard this in a professional development thing last year or something. You know, and you hear there's all these catchphrases that come up, and every once in a while I actually listen to those. And, a couple of years ago, the principal said there was this thing about relationship before rigor, and that was the saying. And he said, "Look, the kid, you can't on day one go walk in and just start beating
Drill
the kids
sergeant,
to death.
yeah.
You got to build some sort of relationship with these kids." And so I really focus on that. Is I try and get to know the kid, and if I think that motivation. I think a lot of that's cured if they just know you care. Or if they go through those times, they feel comfortable enough to come to you and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling," instead of hiding it or lying about it or, "Yeah, I'm practicing."
Right.
So, motivation's tough. I don't do any really extrinsic stuff.
I think you hit on something though, because definitely what I would typically want to do is to force the issue. You know, like you said, I would want to do, I see it as fourth week in a row or whatever, and I would want to try to do something to force it out of them. And you're taking kind of a more opposite approach of, maybe you should back off a little bit in some scenarios. You know, don't try to force this issue right now. And maybe like the mom, you were saying the mom wanted to, what do I do? You know, and maybe these last 2 weeks just aren't the 2 weeks. You know, maybe, and that's what I wanted to do. And I need to keep remembering that might not even just go drill sergeant on them with, obviously not yelling or anything, but maybe to back off and to just keep riding it out, and maybe that is the way. I think you're probably onto something there.
There's a balance here though too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't excuse poor performance or poor behavior in terms of just not caring and coming in because they, So
like attitude is different. Like
yes,
if they're bringing like crazy, ridiculous attitude and rolling their eyes,
right.
that's not what I'm talking about. You know,
because you can see when the kid they care.
Yeah.
But they're just not motivated right now.
Yeah,
That's why I'm gonna handle it that way.
Yeah.
Now the attitude thing, or
you got to nip that in the bud.
Week one is come to Jesus meeting. Okay.
Come to Jesus.
Oh yeah, I sit down
phrase.
with the kid and say, this gets fixed this week. If they come back the next week and it's still like that, then we have come to Jesus with mom and kid together. Mm-hmm. And I say, you have 1 week to fix it. If not, you're fired.
Wow.
And if they come back the next week, and I had a student walk in, unpack, played about 3 notes, and I said, pack up, you're done. And fired her on the spot. Because it's time away from my wife and my kids.
Wow.
And I'm not going to teach somebody that just does not care and does not want to be there and has proven that over a long period of time. That's a completely different issue.
Sure. Than
a kid that's just struggling to find that motivation again. I'll and a lot of times that's traced back to more of a parental problem, not a kid problem. It's the mom or the dad that is just on the kid nonstop. You have to, and I'm like, it's the kid's life. So you got to help guide them, definitely. But this is bass playing. This is not
9/11.
It's not brain surgery. We're not, we're not curing cancer. We're playing bass. So the kid's got to take the ownership. And what I found with that, and this happens, I'll say every single time, and maybe once it hasn't happened. I'll say every single time where I have told the parent in front of the kid, get off of your kid about this. Just leave them alone. Let them do what they're going to do. When you give the kid ownership, they take the ownership. And that motivation, that's huge.
That's a good point, because obviously when the parent is forcing the lessons, they have zero ownership. The student does, I mean, this is the parent's dream, not theirs. you know, not the kids. And that's really interesting that we're micromanaging the entire thing for them, and they have no own. That's interesting. I've never thought of the ownership problem with that. You said something interesting that I've been rolling around in my head really hard, is that for somebody like myself that makes this your living, and then you have this amount of students, now you sit here with a problem, and I always use the analogy of, I call it the muscle, like a gangster or something, that like they just walk into a place and go, no, you're doing this, you know, or you're dead, you know. But with students, when I have that moment where they're not even close to where I want them to be, like with attitude, etc., because sometimes I need the money so bad, I feel like I don't have the muscle to sit there that, you know, a tenured professor. This happened at UMKC when I went in high school to go teach under Steve Cruz and take from him. And he's like, dude, I've got 20 other high school kids waiting to take your spot right now. If you don't step it up, you're chopped, you know? And I feel like I can't do that, and maybe I'm wrong about that. You know, what do you think about that idea of just telling them you're done, you know, like chop?
Well, in my opinion, you got to put food on the table too.
I know.
You have bills you got to pay. My wife works at a bank. She likes her job.
Mm-hmm.
I got buddies that are in corporate America. What we do is so much better than that. And if you got the problem there is that, you know, as an educator, you want the kid to want this.
Right.
And you have those students, right? You got those kids in your studio, right? You got the kid that really wants it.
Sure.
Well, that's where you go crazy with them. And you push them and you push them and you push them harder. And then the kid comes in that's paying your electric bill, then you still got to do right by the kid.
Mm.
But also emotionally, maybe take a step back and realize, okay, this is electric bill. Hey, electric bill, come on in for your lesson. Come on in, trash bill.
Spend and save your energy in the right spot is sort of the
but
moral there.
I think a little bit. You know, I still think you gotta work for that kid. They're paying you money, so you want to give them your best.
Sure.
But you got to watch your response if they don't respond the way you want. You got to still put everything in that 30-minute hour lesson, whatever you teach them. You got to give them. You got to be 100% in there. But if they don't take 100%, you got to wash that off. You got to brush that off when they leave and get on to the next kid.
Don't be losing sleep over that.
Not that kid.
Take it home.
Because again, it's the kid's thing, Rob. It's not you. It's the kid has to take the ownership. Mm-hmm. And if you got bills to pay.
Yeah.
So I'm not in that situation now. I have been. Where I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to teach whoever's coming over next. But I gotta pay this bill. You know, I did that. And just kind of, you know, did the best I could.
So John Stewart said something really funny. He's like, I'm just on the sidelines throwing things. He's like, that's all my, you know, he's talking about like a coach or something. He's like, I don't play the game. I'm just sitting, you know, I'm just screaming on the sideline. You're the one playing the game, like the student, you know. Yeah. And I'm trying to philosophically wrap my mind around, because at college, you know, obviously they were showing us examples of this teacher's got their crap 100% together. They have their procedures and they are good to the students and they just got everything under control. And then you have the other teacher that isn't, and look at the two classes, it's not even close. But I'm trying to think about, you know, percentages is silly, but how much of this is 100% on us, and how much of it, like you just said, how much do they have to eventually come to you, like at least that much?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm trying to roll in my head, is what do I have control over? Well, I have control over my effort. I have control over maybe how I come at them, but is there only up to a point? You know that.
Yeah, I think this is year 20 of me teaching school. I've written one kid up in 20 years.
Wow.
That's it. Because if I can't control the behavior in my classroom, I don't have any business really teaching in a classroom. Okay, and I tell my 7th graders on day 1 that I'm in charge of this room, and I take that very seriously because I am in charge of the room. My attitude that I come in with the students pick up on it instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that on the day where I maybe don't do so well with that, where maybe a class frustrates me before, so I got 4-minute passing period to kind of get the happy face back on, and right. So let's say that I fail at that.
Yeah.
And the next class comes in and they can tell right away that I'm upset. Then that class period typically doesn't go that well.
Yeah.
Well, is that the kid's fault or my fault?
Mm-hmm.
That's my fault.
Yeah. Right.
And so these students that I've had, when I've had students like that, where you feel like where you feel like you're putting in the minutes, just to get through the lesson.
Yeah.
I find that if I approach those lessons with a different attitude, that it can help change the kid's attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to pick up on you. They know, that kid knows, oh man, Mr. Foster, he doesn't like me very much because I never practice.
Yeah, right.
So I'm going to be, he's going to go, well, okay, had you worked on this, we could.
Right.
So I think our attitude is really important there. I think it rubs
that's...
off on people. And I don't know how I feel I'm probably successful at that at times, and I'm sure I fail miserably at that at times. But I think I realize the fact that I've seen too many times where that kid in my private studio or the class at school, where my attitude has really been either the force for good or for bad.
Oh yeah, definitely. So here's another one for you, because I really like deep abstract philosophical things rolling through my head, and the one that has been really getting me over the last even 5 years is again through this kind of motivation talk of because I'm so into this, and even in at South, I can seriously think of maybe 3 of us that were in my grade that are still playing. Mike obviously deep in it, Mike Block, I'm deep in it, and then another girl I think is still sort of playing. But the idea I was rolling around is that some of these kids, I started when I was 3, and there's no way I'm good enough for Casey Symphony. Those are the cream. I mean, these guys are the freaks of nature that are just amazing. So when I have these kids, I know in my head that there's a whole bunch of stuff that they could do, but this ain't, New York Phil ain't it. They're not going to do that. And so that leads me to say the phrase, okay, why am I doing this? Why are we doing these lessons right now? And the best thing that I can come up with is that you kind of mentioned sort of the parents, right? And the non-musical things that we all know about music, of that we're making music, we're making lifelong music fans, right? We're making productive adults, right? We're learning teamwork. We're learning not making excuses. We're learning all these hard work. We're learning all these non-musical skills. And so that helps me a lot, is to try to remember that. One of my students that I've had recently, I know that he's probably not going to do that, but his parents were explaining to me that he doesn't respond to anybody, and he's responding to you, trying to get me to understand that this is huge, for his development as a person, as a 7th grader. And so I'm trying to roll that in my head, but once in a while when I try to kind of sit down, even a high schooler, and the parents to kind of sit down and talk out those things, it sometimes is that the parent doesn't sort of want to hear it, because I'm giving a little bit of mild criticism with that little speech I'm doing. So it's kind of funny that I'm okay, well, if you're telling me literally that your kid's probably not going to make the symphony, but we're want him to experience music, and then I go talk about why this is important of all these non-musical things, and then you're getting mad at this too. Why the hell are we doing this right now? It doesn't make any sense to me when they complain about both of those things. You know?
Well, the soft skills you talk about, you know about the survey that Google did of all their top employees?
No, I'm curious.
Okay, so Google, they it's recently, in the last year or two. Mm-hmm. They took a survey they took all their top executives, mm-hmm. and they were trying to figure out what traits do they all have in common.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the top 7 things were things like ability to work in a group, ability to take direction, ability to think creatively. All the STEM stuff
Right.
wasn't even on their radar.
Yeah.
So Google has changed their hiring practices because they realize all the things that actually make a person successful in their field are the soft skills, not your how many physics classes you had. And so I put it up. I just did this. I just found this year. So like back to school night, I put this up on the board and I said, I went through the soft skills, the teamwork, and
conscientiousness, probably some personality traits, and et cetera.
And I said that's my curriculum.
Yeah.
That's our curriculum in the arts. So but what why are you doing this? Because they're not going to be in the Kansas City Symphony. I mean, the average life of a musician in any given orchestra is like what, 5 or 7 years or something before they move on, because they end up feeling like a factory worker. Your job, if you're violin 8 in the section, your job is to move your bow exactly the same time as 7 and 9, and if you do that, your reward is that the conductor ignores you, right? And
like linemen in football or something, you just do your job. And
and so you actually kind of feel like a factory worker. And that's why the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, they hold members for 25 plus years because it's a conductorless group. They conduct themselves, and it's democratic process of bowings and dynamics and stuff. But so here's what one of my favorite. One of my top 3 favorite jazz bass players in Kansas City is Tim Brewer. God, I love Tim.
Yeah.
In his day gig, he's a dentist. And I tell the kids, you're not doing this to get a career. You're doing this to get a life. And the kids, I actually steer most kids away from, music as a career.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The only reason I would steer somebody towards it is if I had heard things or saw things in them since 7th grade that, I want to be a teacher. I want to be da-da-da-da. And then their junior year of high school, they go, maybe I'll teach music. Go for it.
Right.
But, a lot of times it's, I want to play. Well, maybe I'll just go get a teaching degree. And I've told a lot of students, don't do that. Because you're not a teacher.
Yeah, you're a player.
Yeah, you're good. So I tell the kids, go do whatever you're going to do. And then you play in a community group. You gig
join
on the
a bunch of bands.
That's your passion should be your hobby. Don't make your passion your job. So for me, jazz band was the only reason I went to high school. My orchestra program was terrible. We only did string strings. I'm a bass player. I didn't even touch my bow. It was like polkas and hoedowns, and I was like, well, the violin players are having fun. And I'm getting ripped off, I'm playing 1 5 1 5 1 5. So that was like a waste of my time, so jazz band was it for me, and so I played jazz on the side now. Teaching is what I do during the day. I happen to teach music. I was actually going to teach English for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was going to be my thing, and then I don't even remember. It might have been senior year of high school even. I said, well, I guess I'll teach music. But that's what I encourage my kids to do. You're not taking lessons so that you can be in the Kansas City Symphony.
Yeah.
You're taking lessons so that when you have to go sit at the bank like my wife does all day behind the desk and type on a computer, or you have to, I got a buddy that, it was really interesting. He is a wellness coach, so companies will hire people from his company to come in and train employees how to sit right so they don't have to go to the doctor for hurt backs or whatever. He doesn't do that job. He's on the administrative side of it. And he said, in the corporate world, there's no end to my job. There's not and I was like, man, I worked for 9 weeks and we put on a concert.
Yeah, there's an end. Yeah.
We did something. He goes, not me. It was, I thought, my God, what? Have to go to work every day and never get to experience these like total ups.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. I'm sure he does it, and I'm sure he's very happy. And, but I'm telling the kids, you got 4 years in high school. Love them. Love every day of that. I get kids that want to graduate early all the time. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
What's the hurry? Then you get, okay, I got to get out of here. I got to get on. So you got to get to college, right? And then you got to get out of college. Why?
Yeah.
So you can get a job and pay bills for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so while you're in that job for the rest of your life and paying bills, you have something that you can go to once a week and join a community group or a gig on the side or play weddings on the weekend. Something that can give you some sort of artistic, everybody in the world needs some sort of an artistic outlet.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think about that for teachers? Is that insanely important for especially public school teachers that are
to
hearing,
actively play?
well, hearing the squeaky E's all day and, ready to kill themselves, and then getting to go out and do their community orchestra where they get to actually do something, or their jazz band. You think that's insanely important?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't even have to be that.
Right, or whatever their thing is. Yeah.
So a number of years ago, I took golf lessons for a while.
Mhm.
It's the exact same benefit of me actively playing. When I had to have a coach, was trying to talk to me about how to do all this stuff, and then I was trying to go teach a kid that really didn't know how to hold a bow, and I really didn't know how to hold a golf club, and I just got into a lesson. So when I was in the student role,
Yeah.
as a 30-year-old man, this was a while back.
Yeah.
I did that. I was related to the kids.
Yeah.
But for me, being an
Wow.
active musician and playing and then go teaching music, I think it's incredibly valuable.
Wow.
Because you understand and you remember what it is to be in an ensemble. It's completely different being on the podium.
Oh yeah.
Completely different. You forget what it was like to actually sit in the section, and you remember how to actually solve problems. So you talk to the musicians from the musician standpoint.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes we talk to them from the conductor standpoint. Well, they don't get that, but but I can say,
I like that.
hey, last night we had I was at rehearsal, and we had this exact same problem. My section, we couldn't do this. We could not get this thing together, and here's how we fixed it. I maybe not go into that story with them, and in your mind you do. So then you talk to them.
Yeah.
Well, what did we do in rehearsal last night?
I like that.
So I think it's insanely important for teachers to continue to play in some capacity.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I actually didn't play for a long time. I've only been actively playing again for 4.5 years now. Because my kids are older now. I got my older son's 22, and so he's in college, and the younger guy is 16. But I was baseball coach.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and so I coached baseball nonstop for 14 years in a row.
Wow.
Because they're 7 years apart, and I coached both of their teams.
Yeah.
So I'm doing baseball 4 or 5 nights a week. So that was my job for a long time, was baseball coach.
Yeah.
But now that the younger one's on the high school team, the other older one's in college, I can play again. So I've rediscovered that how important it is.
I think you're helping me kind of understand something, because I love this so much, and it's one of those things that when not when a kid does it, but when I hear music played badly, like, it makes me angry. Like, literally drives me nuts. And so that's when that comes out a little bit from me to the student, that obviously I'm never yelling at him or anything, but that's just an intrinsic thing that I don't think I need to shut that off, because that's part of my drive. But at the same time, you're making a good point in the sense that I need to keep remembering that this is not 9/11. This is not them doing all of these scales endlessly. We all know that if you want to get here, you have to do all this stuff. We all know that. But if they're not going to get there, do they need to sit here and do A flat major 3-octave scale for 90 days in a row? It's
yes,
like,
they do.
You think they do?
I do, and
Wow.
I do the same thing with my students in my studio.
Uh-huh.
If they A flat major, that's a hard one on bass too.
Yeah.
3-octave A flat major.
Whatever scale.
That's
whatever.
a good one, because that's really hard to do well.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, go through this rigor of
but it has nothing,
stuff.
because it has nothing to do with the scale. It's the soft skills that you were talking about earlier. You're teaching this kid how to be tenacious and how to solve a problem, and how not to give up.
Go through something that takes years, and the discipline and keep going and all that. Yeah.
And I tell them, and again, you don't excuse. I don't ever excuse poor performance for my students.
Yeah.
I tell them that's terribly out of tune.
Yeah.
That might be the worst skill I've heard all week. But I don't anymore I had an experience I'll tell you about here in a minute that kind of changed this, but I don't ever approach it from okay, I shouldn't use, I don't ever do this.
Right, yeah.
Most of the time, I don't approach it from any sort of frustration. I'm just honest with them, and then I fix the problem.
Yeah.
So the rhythm's bad. So if the whole class screws the rhythm up, I go, well, that's my fault. I didn't teach that very well, so okay, let's go back and teach it. We're really out of tune. Well, maybe I should have taught them to play better in tune then. That's always my attitude towards everything. If they don't do something, then I didn't teach it right. And so we got to go back and fix it. And so I just get to work. And so I always approach it always, there it was again. I try to approach it from a very positive standpoint.
Right.
Mary Lou told me, she said once a year you got to go off on all your classes. And I don't do that on purpose. I have done it on purpose. Like things are just too comfortable. So I got to lay into them a little bit we got to reestablish what our roles are here.
Yeah.
So I have done that a couple times in my career. I don't do it yearly by any means, but
that really makes an impression too if you don't do that a while, right? Like Lou Piniella was famous, once right before the pennant race, he starts throwing bases and gets kicked out, and then all of a sudden his team goes, 10-2 the next 12 games.
We're doing an art form. There is emotion here,
and
you can't divorce yourself from the emotion. Now that emotion is in the art, though. It's in the music making. It's not at the kid.
Yeah.
I tried to be, when you're, learning how to do this job of standing in front of, 100 high school kids and trying to get them to make music together. There's no class that teaches you how to do that. So when you're a younger teacher and I'm standing there, I'm trying to figure out who I am. I picked a mentor that I respected a lot, and I said, well, I'm going to do that. And this person was that kind of Toscanini reigning authority from the podium. And I just felt like I wasn't going well. And so over the summer, I really kind of studied what this person did. And I went into the next school year with, okay, this is how this is going to be the best. And I'm just cracking the whip and, that's out of tune. I taught that rhythm yesterday. I'm not teaching that. Why do I have to teach this rhythm again?
Yeah.
So I tried to do that, and this little girl, her name is Nia. I'll never forget. This has got to be 12 years ago at this point. She raised her hand and she said, "Miss Mulvenon, why are you so angry this year? You were nicer than the last year." That's all she said.
Yeah.
And I went home that day and I went, "That's not me." So trying to figure out you got to find. We all, as educators, you got to find out who you are. And then you're happy with that, because I think we all try to make everybody else like us. Orchestra teachers, classroom teachers, I got the best way. This is how you do this. And there is no best way. The best way is, how can you reach kids being raw? Because if you tried to be me, it would come off like a hustle.
It's not going to work, right.
It wouldn't be authentic. And so you have to be authentic to yourself. And that's a tough process.
I think for myself, I was trying to list out the other day, last couple things on motivation, because it's like it's the key to me, and it's what I've figured out is all the learning how to teach rhythm and all the little drills and stuff. That's the easy crap. I think this is the tough thing that all of us go through, and I know that I can feel that just me showing the passion of how much I love this. I don't have any problem with that. They can feel that in 5 seconds with talking to me. Definitely the setting up all that kind of external motivators of making a concert and having a thing, that has nothing really to do with me. It's about the concert, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go practice this because I want to sound good, and then definitely the tone with how to talk to them and doing some of the stuff that you've already mentioned. I'm definitely going to try to, and definitely giving them practice techniques on the greatest people in the world have practiced this way, and it's gone ridiculously efficient. Slow it down, work on parts, all those kind of things that we always work on with them, just the technique, how to practice techniques. And so I know I'm doing fine with all that stuff, but the kind of the tone and knowing if and when I even need to say something to them, like you were talking about, maybe we just need to back off for 2 weeks and stuff. And I appreciate you saying stuff like that, because I do need to keep working on that.
Anytime I think something going on with the kid, I get them isolated, and I always ask them, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Because you don't know the baggage that the kids come to you with. So the lack of motivation, you just don't know what's causing it.
Yeah.
And we internalize things, especially artists. Everything that you're wanting to this, you want people, you want the validation, and you want approval,
and half the time, even if you ask them, they may not, they may not tell you even something like that.
Exactly,
Sure,
but you've given them the opportunity, and you keep giving them the opportunity.
Wow.
But what you do by doing that, you build a culture of trust with people, and I don't ever assume that I'm the one that's caused a kid to be unmotivated. You just don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know, they may be flunking science right now, and their dad lays into them every night about science, and now go to viola.
Right.
And you just don't want to assume that you have that answer. And I think that and again, you don't save every kid. Your kids are gonna drop, they're gonna quit.
Yeah.
But if you approach every lesson from an aspect of love, and every interaction you do with people is you show them that you care and you're trying to do good by them. I think more often than not the results are positive.
Wow, man, that's a whole of a story.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I think the other thing that has happened to me too is like I was saying, I was trying to list out all the things that I know I'm already doing. I'm trying to talk to the parents every other couple lessons, let them know what's going on during the lessons. I'm trying to do the concerts. I'm trying to show I'm excited about music. I'm doing the practice techniques. I'm showing, I just list out all these things, and I'm still like, there's still got to be something else I'm not doing, and maybe that's sometimes my lesson is once in a while, yeah, there is, but sometimes there isn't. You're kind of doing everything, and sometimes they're just, they're just gonna quit. You can do everything you want, and I definitely don't want to get off on this tangent, but I think there might be a little bit of political message in there. Can you save all of them? That's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I'm trying to remember in my head is that, for sure they're not all going to be symphony, but is this lifelong love for everybody? And some people might see that as an excuse to give up or something, and I don't know if that's the case.
It's not, but you let the kid discover that on their own.
Two quick questions here. One, the one thing that I was thinking of the other day after I've been diving into all this non-classical music is I've been really, it was always funny to me when we do like we did like the Grease medley, with songs from Grease or whatever, and I'll hear some of the, like the other day I heard like Smells Like Teen Spirit, orchestra arrangement, and like some of that stuff when I'm like teaching non-classical music to my students, like I have sort of a tough time with it and a really easy time with it, because after studying this stuff for real, I know that there's like a real way to do this, and then there's like that way to do, when you're playing jazz or playing rock, and there's something when I get up on the rock stage with a rock band. It's funny because I'm trying to be as efficient as possible with my bow, right? And I'm trying to play as musically as possible. And then I go watch another guy, and he's like screaming or, up and running around the stage. And I know that there's an authenticness of what he's doing that is rock. And what I'm doing is a bastard version of rock, because I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be. And my dad was saying this at a show. He's like, dude, you've got to stand with your lyrics. You've got to put that stand down. Everybody needs to see you going wild and crazy on your bow. I know what they would say in classical, but if you're on the stage in a rock bar, like they want to see you going wild and crazy. And he's right. And so when I see these orchestra conductors, I understand their mentality of wanting to kind of update the curriculum and not just play all this old 1700s crap. And they want to play all these pop tunes and like try to keep the kids as motivated as possible with the repertoire. But it drives me nuts because with me playing like a swing beat, when I'm at a jazz club, I know you need to do this. You need to do your slurring like this, or else it sounds like
right. Yeah. Swing rhythms and bows don't work out
right. And so
well
and they can, but you've got to do it right.
Right.
But this teacher doesn't know how to do it because they don't ever play jazz, and so I'm at this problem with wanting to make this as authentic as possible, and knowing that the Miles Davises of the world are turning in their grave about me trying to teach this kid wrong with the style and stuff. What do you think about the problem? Do you think there's kind of an issue with repertoire and people not knowing?
Here's what I think. I think good music is good music.
Mm-hmm.
I have a number of experiences there. I have a great, what I thought was a great arrangement of Cashmere for strings.
Yeah, Zeppelin. Yeah.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
And you pass it out, and the kids that knew Cashmere are like, "Oh my God, we're playing Zeppelin!"
Mm-hmm.
And then when they realized what Cashmere actually is, that was about 2 class periods worth of work, and then they were done because it's the same thing over and over.
Right.
And so I think kids get turned on by quality literature. I'll ask the kids, oftentimes, what's the best piece of music you have in the folder? And I equate music to food a lot. Beethoven's like filet mignon, and Louie Louie is like a donut, and donuts are great every once in a while. I wouldn't make my whole diet on them. But what I've realized is that regardless of the style, the genre of music that's in the folder, the kids will pick the best quality music in the folder. They dig good music.
Yeah.
And
there's all integrity with all of it too.
Yeah, definitely. And I teach it all seriously. I do a little improv actually in my class. You'd be proud of me.
Yeah.
I do it in the middle school. You can't do that in high school. You can't start it in high school.
Yeah.
They're too self-conscious about it. But seventh graders are still, and the teacher said, I will do.
Yeah.
So I do Mac the Knife because it's a really great chord progression, and the key it's in for us is it lays really well. It's in the key of D, and it lays really well on the instruments. And I just take it, I take the form and I have repeats written into the music, and we just, I start out and I tell them that you're only allowed to play the root of the chord. And your job is to come up with the coolest rhythm. And we talk about the saxophone solo that's 15 minutes long. He plays one note the whole time. So we talk about how to, really create something. I tell a story of I was in this jazz group in college, and the saxophone player, there was a couple different saxophone players. The tenor player that was a really good friend of mine, Adam, he was very, very good. So there was another guy in the band, and he was at times would play beautifully, and then other times it was like, how many notes can I put underneath my fingers? And so Adam leans over to me during the gig, goes, "Man, that guy's got diarrhea of the horn." And I was like, I get it, man. Just so you got to teach the kids about how to do that. But so they dig Mac the Knife all the time, and so that's a great piece, and I value that. I don't on purposely put pop music into my program just to have a pop piece, because most of that, the kids, it's really just not interesting enough. It's like 4th grade harmony, it's a 1, 4, and a 5 chord, and the kids get that real quick, and they go, okay, this was fun. What's next? So I have no problem with multiple genres. I love doing tangos. And we do a lot of South American type music. I love all that stuff. I don't have anything against doing multiple genres in the classroom and in the public school setting. But I think you got to give them quality music where all the instruments are challenged. Rob, I'll be honest. About 80% of the music in the library, in our music library at school, we have thousands of pieces. I open up the score, and if the first thing I think is, well, the violin players will like this, then I put that away. I will not play that piece. And about 80% of the music that we have is written for violin players. Well, there's bass players in the group too. And they deserve to be challenged and have as much fun. And if they're pizzicatoing 3 notes the entire song, but the violin players are ripping around their instrument, are you really doing right by the group if you're only serving one master?
I know the Brandenburgs are really famous for that. Everybody's got something, you know.
All Baroque music,
right?
It's very active for all the instruments. But you know, so the concert I did, the Kashmir thing on. I did Finlandia, and we did Purple Haze. It was a stick it to the man concert. Okay.
Finlandia and Purple Haze.
Well, yeah, because it's the same. It's you know, Sibelius wrote it as a Finnish pride song, and when Russia was occupying Finland, you could not, you know, it's like America the Beautiful.
Right.
You know, that's the Finlandia theme, and so it was a total stick it to the man. And so it's the same thing with Purple Haze. You know, it's, you know, kind of protest music or whatever.
Yeah, that's funny.
So we had Kashmir, Purple Haze, and Finlandia in the book.
Yeah.
And I asked the kids, what's the coolest piece you got? It was Finlandia.
Yeah.
It was by far the greatest piece of music. They loved it.
Well, Finlandia is awesome. I mean, it's an awesome piece of music.
But you look at the quality, and again, Purple Haze, it's a great arrangement. I think it's the Turtle Island arrangement of that. I think. That might be wrong, but anyway, it's one of those, you know, rock quartet arrangements of that stuff.
Oh, Kronos, you mean?
I don't think it's Kronos.
Okay, because I know they did a famous Purple Haze, but anyway.
Maybe it was then. Gosh, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. But that's interesting because there's so many classical pieces that every single time they eat it up. Hoedown is one. Finlandia would be another. Brandenburg. I mean, there's, you know, 30 or 100, you know, of those. We always liked, we did Dance Macabre was one. Our orchestra loved Dance Macabre, you know, and there's a whole bunch of those. What's the Russian Easter is another one, you know, there's a whole...
My group can't play that.
Yeah, but there's that, you know, there's a handful of those pretty good pieces, and they will always like those. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that I understand why those orchestra directors want to do stuff like that, because they might have this feeling like I'm losing them, you know, in general, kind of over the last 10 years of, and you know, to me that might be an umbrella thing of just the motivation in general. I wonder if that's really the bigger issue than just doing the same crap, talking to them the same way you've always done, but just change the music choices. I don't know if that's going to do it, right? I mean,
it's not going to. I've rarely seen that work with any program, to revive, to bring back. And again, I play some of that stuff. I don't have anything against that, but I would never build my program around it because there's such a limited time, and so it's that was always the argument with the, you know, me against the strolling thing. I know you went through that, and then Mary Lou did such an awesome job of balancing that.
Oh yeah, see, ours wasn't all strolling; it was totally extra, and everybody didn't have to do it, you know. And so that was like probably different from how you did it.
So that's what orchestra was, and so it's, you know, what do you give up to do that? You know, so if, you know, teachers that say, okay, I feel like I'm losing the kids, so we're going to turn this into a rock band. Well, then, I mean, then you're giving up Mozart to do that. You give up Beethoven because you only have so many hours in the day. So you're going to give up Mozart for a hoedown?
Right.
I wouldn't. I think that, again, because the kids get quality literature, and I'm talking like I don't teach rich kids. I teach. You know, my population's changed a lot. I'm probably like low middle class now.
Right.
My younger groups are about a third Hispanic, which is awesome. The community is incredible.
Right.
The support and the love that comes from that community is just really great. I dig it a lot.
Yeah.
They don't know classical music, but man, we did the Smetana.
Moldau.
Yeah, the Moldau themes. These kids were like, they just couldn't
That's
get
another
enough
one
of that.
of those
They'd
was
run in, go,
great,
were you doing Smetana today? You know, and these are kids that, you know, when they, you know, didn't speak English 2 years ago.
Dropping Smetana on you.
Yeah, you know, so kids aren't stupid, man. They know what good music is.
Right, yeah.
So I
The other one that was interesting that I thought about with your specific district is that I heard this the other day that you guys have an inordinate amount of apartments in your district, as I heard, right?
Oh, that's crazy.
See, South, it's not like that. We have houses everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I thought of that in regards to the turnover. I didn't ever consider that. I don't know if you deal with that.
I don't get a lot of turnover here's what I do notice. Not at the high school.
Oh, that's interesting.
But from what I've heard, it's a lot in the elementary schools. And then in the middle school, a little bit. But once the kids get into high school, I think the family's pretty much
try to stay there.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of move in or move out. I got, a couple a year, like
sure,
two,
which is not much. Yeah.
No, I have 140 kids in my program at the high school.
Right.
So two, half of, whatever.
Yeah.
1.5%. So it's
sure,
not,
that's not much.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a lot, but no, the more kind of problem. I don't want to sound ungrateful or that it's a problem. It's the fact that very few kids can afford private lessons or quality instruments.
Right. Yeah.
I have a poor young man. He's 6 foot tall. He's playing on a 3/4 size violin because that's what he's got. His family can't. That's just what they got him.
Yeah.
And okay.
Yeah, I know.
Let's go, brother.
You got to deal with it. Yeah.
Get it out. Let's play. Put your fingers closer together.
Yeah, right. Get up in sixth position. You'll have to be lifting those up to put the other one down, right?
So, and I don't care.
Yeah.
He's a great kid.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll get him a violin, so it'll be all right. But
yeah, man. So I mean, we could probably do this for about 8 more hours. What is if you had like maybe I guess one overall piece of advice for maybe a teacher or even a younger person who's a player, you can kind of answer it however you want, but if you had one or two general piece of advice that for teachers and or players or anybody, what?
I think the most important thing, and it doesn't matter if you're a teacher or a student or anything, and I actively talk about to my kids with this. Live the golden rule every day. That's the greatest thing. If you treat others the way you want to be treated, no matter what you're doing, you're going to be happy, and the people around you will be happy. And that's so much more important than anything else. So I think I wear peace sign shirts to school, and I teach peace and I teach love to my students, and I think that to teach love is the greatest thing that anybody could do. And you don't have to be a teacher to do that.
Yeah, wow. That's great, man. This is Curtis Mulvenon, teacher at Shawnee Mission West. We will be back next time on KC Music Talk to talk to some other person about something. So, yeah.
Rob, it's been fun.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, no problem.
I really do.
Trying to get more teachers on the show. We've talked to a lot of the blues scene and a lot of like gigging guys, but it's awesome for me to get to talk to teachers because there's stuff I know you guys have in public school, little insider baseball, because you guys have like weekly sessions with all the string teachers, right? Or once in a while you guys will get together, and so you guys will get to kind of talk shop a little bit, and get some more advice. And for somebody like myself, I don't get to do that because I'm just out here, private teaching, so it's always fun to me to talk to another teacher specifically. Yeah. So, there you go. Get out of here. It's Rob Foster, Curtis Mulvenon. You guys take it easy.
Thanks.